good day is what I would say if it was a good day, but it's not. It's just a normal day. Plug my phone in. But yeah, howdy, lay howdy. We just street vibing. Guess we can scroll the YouTubes, see if there's any antinatalism content worth reviewing for today. Hmm. Road to antinatalism, according to AI.
Antinatalism challenges the conventional wisdom of procreation, asserting that bringing new sentient beings into a world fraught with suffering is morally objectionable. The philosophical underpinnings of antinatalism raise profound questions about the nature of existence and the responsibilities of individuals in a complex and interconnected society. At the heart of the antinatalist perspective lies the asymmetry argument, a concept formulated by philosopher David Benatar. This argument hinges on a fundamental imbalance between the presence of suffering and the absence of suffering. It suggests that while the absence of suffering is a good thing, the absence of pleasure is not necessarily bad. The asymmetry argument rests on two key premises: the existence premise and the comparative premise. The existence premise posits that existence entails suffering and potential harm, while the comparative premise holds that non-existent individuals are devoid of any deprivation. David Benatar's work dives into the intricacies of human suffering, presenting a pessimistic view of existence. He argues that even lives filled with pleasure are outweighed by the inherent suffering they contain. This bleak perspective challenges traditional notions of the inherent goodness of life. Critics of the asymmetry argument question its assumptions and validity. Some argue that the absence of suffering does not inherently hold positive value, while others emphasize the potential for meaningful and joyful
Philosophy.
experiences in life. Antinatalism forces us to reconsider established moral frameworks. It sparks debates about the responsibilities of parents, the role of societal institutions, and the ethical implications of imposing existence on future generations. While antinatalism presents a thought-provoking ideology, its practical implications raise complex challenges. Society must grapple with issues related to birth control, family planning, and the autonomy of individuals in making reproductive choices. The asymmetry argument intertwines with environmental ethics, as it questions the ethical implications of increasing the human population amidst ecological crises and resource depletion. Exploring the psychological dimensions of the asymmetry argument leads us to contemplate the ways in which human minds perceive and process suffering, pleasure, and the complexities of existence. Cultural norms and values play a significant role in shaping attitudes toward procreation. Antinatalism's clash with prevailing cultural beliefs prompts us to consider the extent to which societal paradigms influence our ethical judgments. Delving into a hypothetical scenario, we explore the concept of choice for non-existent beings. Can a non-existent individual truly be deprived of the opportunity for pleasure? Antinatalism confronts the paradox of parental love, the tension between the desire to nurture and protect one's offspring and the potential harm that existence may entail. The experience of suffering and the search for meaning unite all sentient beings. Antinatalism opens a dialogue about the shared burdens and existential dilemmas faced by humanity. While antinatalism challenges the act of procreation, it also encourages a broader discussion about improving the human condition through empathy, compassion, and a commitment to alleviating suffering. The asymmetry argument serves as a captivating entry point into the intricate web of antinatalist philosophy. While it sparks intense contemplation, it also leaves us with unanswered questions, inviting ongoing discourse and introspection.
No, I'm definitely gonna post anyway.
From the thumbnail and the title is about antinatalism in Somalia.
All right, so I find this video interesting because a point that was made in this video, specifically revolving around how, like in, I guess, a lot of African languages, topics like antinatalism don't really exist. So obviously that leaves like little room for discussion revolving around these topics. But I think that besides that, it's kind of like more of a religious thing. I mean, you can find examples of religious texts that forbid the usage of contraception, deeming it unnatural. So I believe this is the reason that, the birth rate throughout the entire continent is so high, despite the rates of poverty. I also believe that these children are being produced to help around, the house and to take care of the elders when, they're old and, yeah, just, get the family money.
Go from the thumbnail and the title is about antinatalism in Somalia.
All right, so I find this video interesting because a point that was made in this video, specifically revolving around how, like in, I guess, a lot of African languages, topics like antinatalism don't really exist. So obviously that leaves like little room for discussion revolving around these topics. But I think that besides that, it's kind of like more of a religious thing. I mean, you can find.
If an elf and a dwarf mate, would it make a human? Going by
No.
Go from the thumbnail and the title is about antinatalism in Somalia.
Maybe later we'll focus more on the fanatical vegan. When I first created the channel, and when I had the channel name Gnostic Antinatalist, that was actually, there's many inspirations for why I changed the name. That was one of them, though, one of many. I just got so tired of these fanatical ethalists and or fanatical vegans going on their sprees. It was mostly for me fanatical ethalists because I support vegans in their individual decisions and choices doing that. I don't oppose veganism itself, nor do I oppose vegan outreach. So for me, it was mostly being harassed and hounded by ethalists. But when people are more vocal about their freedom and decision to keep eating meat, etc., well, they also tend to get harassed by the fanatical vegans as well. So this is going to be a video saying something on behalf of and standing up for AAA and thanking him for being one of the very few people to actually call this bullshit out. So thanks, brother. I appreciate it. You're one of the very few content creators that has the balls to call out their bullshit and expose it for what it is and recognize the culty insanity that it's going to lead to inevitably if they're not regularly called out and put a check on. Because shit like that can go south really fucking fast. If you haven't noticed, if you've observed the course of history, how cults form, people don't initially think they're involved in a cult or that's what it is or it's going to be. And then by the time they realize that's what it is, it's usually way too late. Holy shit, this is a cult. Oh my God, how do I escape? So in order to prevent that thing from ever occurring, because I want to make sure that never occurs ever within the world of atheism or antinatalism. I take it as a personal goal to make sure that never occurs in these folds, okay? So if it never occurs, great. I will consider my goal having been achieved in that regards because I fucking hate cults of all types and descriptions. I'm extremely familiar with them. And everything about them I despise. The group dynamics, the group think, the way they operate, the subversive lying nature of them. how they pass off as not being a cult when they so evidently obviously are. Key questions you use to ask and expose and find out if it's a cult or not, and observing how the responses take place, etc. So I like talking about how to expose that shit. In fact, I may have an entire channel devoted to exposing cults and pre-cult psychologies also. So this video is going to be mostly dedicated to exposing the pre-cult psychology of fanatical Efilism and or fanatical veganism. I'm going to focus more on the fanatical Efilist side in this video. Maybe later we'll focus more on the fanatical vegan aspect, but we'll touch on that as well. We'll see where it takes us. So as you all recall, my channel used to be called Gnostic Antinatalist, right? And I got constantly hounded right, left, and center over and over again. People going on, oh, you're not an actual Gnostic. You don't agree with this particular Gnostic narrative or that Gnostic. Them not understanding that my use of the term Gnostic is a much broader use of the term, referring to knowledge, what I know for certain, and basing my beliefs and views on what I do know for certain, versus agnostic, which is emphasis on what we don't know, basing views and stances on what is not known yet, sort of like a hold-off stance. Whereas I was doing basically the opposite of that. And my use of the term Gnostic had to do more so with that than it did with anything to do with Gnostic religiosity of the past or anything of the sort, okay? But never mind that. No matter how many times you re-explain that to people, you get the drill, right? So I just got tired of having to re-explain that over and over and over again, and I was, all right, fuck this. I'm just going to call my channel something else, which emphasizes my views more, which is pleasurist views anyway. Antinatalism being just one small aspect of my pleasurist views, but not my main focus. And it's been hunky-dory since then, minus a few crazed nut jobs and schizos going on their standard tangent narratives about everybody, me and everybody else under the sun. Other than that, everything's been peachy, smooth sailing. People have been friendly and very solid supporters and enjoyable to talk to, actually. Reasonable people. So here we are now today, right? So when I saw him actively calling this bullshit out, I was very happy to see this, because you almost never see this in the fold of antinatalism as a whole. Very few people solidly call out Efilist views for the fucked up bullshit that they are. It's not very common, because a lot of people wrongly assume that antinatalism automatically equals Efilism, that they're the same thing. No, they're not actually. In fact, Efilism mostly had to do with an individual named Enmendum, that term being coined, etc. There may have been a few others that used the term also, but he was the main one, as far as I know, that originally started using that term, which is the reversal of the term life, right? EFIL versus LIFE. So anti-lifeism, in other words, pro-non-lifeism, which you call Efilism. And in Mendham, yeah, we can talk about him in other places, other videos. I have a lot to say about that guy in terms of a content creator as well as a person personally, but we won't talk about that here all that much. The point being is that the ideology of Efilism itself is, number one, first and foremost, here's the main thing I want everybody to understand. Efilism is 100% unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary as a philosophy and as a viewpoint.
I don't
for two key
know
reasons.
about that.
Okay?
I mean, maybe,
the first key reason is
maybe
that it's not an ideology that's able to be additionally acted on beyond antinatalism. So being an antinatalist, you're already covered the bases of everything to do with compassion, responsible life, etc. You don't need Efilism. Okay, that's the first point. All the bases are already covered as an antinatalist. So what is this additional Efilist bullshit floating around? Why is that there? The second point is the fact that Efilists don't actually value the volition and desire of other sentient beings, okay? Because if, and they regularly say this, if they were given a red button, right, a proverbial red button, and they had access to a Death Star level machine, they would push the red button and eliminate all life, at least on this planet. If not every other planet they had access to eliminate life on. That's insanely fucked up, because it shows that they don't actually care about your desire to keep living, or mine individually to keep living. If they have power over you, they will eliminate you from existing, even if you desire existing. So they're bullshitters, because right now, while they're here, not having that power, they'll go on and on and on, talking about how they value the rights of your sentience, your will, and blah, 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 blah. They don't, though. They don't give half a shit about your will. Antinatalists do actually give a shit about others' wills, and it stops there. Others' desires, okay? We're not talking about free will. We're talking about the desires of sentiences, all right? Within simultaneous determinism, because free will is, of course, proven false. Different topic for a different video. We've crushed that and exposed that elsewhere, so if you're interested in that, go watch those videos. The point being is that if you're an individual like me who desires to keep living, and let's say today, Efilist Joe got access to a Death Star, and there he is standing up in his Death Star, and he has access to this red button that shoots a beam on Earth that just completely vaporizes the entire planet in an instant. Okay, and there he is. Oh fuck! Oh shit! He's walking towards the button. Oh god damn it! That fucking asshole! I want to keep living, that piece of shit. And then there he goes, and he just pushes it, and then we're all annihilated, right? At least from these bodies and brains. And some Efilists, even though most of them don't believe in the soul, would go so far as to, if they had a red button available to them to eliminate souls, also they would also press that. Okay, so that's like doubly fucked up. But most of them don't believe a soul exists at all, anyway. So for the most part, for them it extends to the body and brain being vaporized, right? So is that respecting your will? No, he doesn't give a shit about your will. If he has the power to eliminate you from existing, he thinks he's justified in doing that because that's his will for you, not your will for yourself, right? Okay, and never mind the millions of other humans on Earth that want to keep living, or hell, the animals that desire and enjoy their lives, who, if they had human levels of cognizance, would in many cases desire to keep doing the living thing instead of the dying thing, you know? They don't give a shit about this. They'll say they do now because they don't have power over you right now. But as soon as they get power over you, then they want to say and determine for you what happens to you, specifically eliminating you and vaporizing you. So it's relevant whether you're an individual who wants to be individually vaporized or not. they don't respect other desires aside from the desire to be vaporized. That's the only desire they respect, basically.
I don't respect the desire for
So you see the issue now? Whereas if you're an antinatalist, you wouldn't push the red button because you do respect the sentiences of others. If it's okay, here, you have access to the red button, you can vaporize all sentience on the planet, you'd be like, no, motherfucker. There's billions of humans that want to keep doing the living thing. There's tons of animals that are enjoying their lives. No, I'm not going to push this red button. And then others would go on the spiel about, well, if you had the ability to eliminate them all from being able to reproduce, would you push it? Well, if you think deep enough about it, that would be as fucked up. That would actually be worse in many ways than pressing a vaporizing button, because you'd have the species die off like instantly, especially if bacteria were prevented from reproducing. Well, everybody would drop dead anyway. It's basically the same thing as vaporizing all life. You know, okay. So let's say this is the variation of the button you have access to as an antinatalist. You still probably wouldn't press it if you're an actual antinatalist who actually cares about others' desires. Okay, sentiences. Okay, if you push this button, you're going to eliminate the ability of reproduction in all forms that are fish and animal level up to human level, but bacteria and certain species of insects are going to be able to keep reproducing, so that will ensure that humans gradually go extinct, and the animals also go extinct fairly quickly. They would go extinct quite fast, obviously, in that case, because the predators wouldn't have food to eat and so on and so forth, right? So you get the drill, right? But even then, humans would still go extinct pretty fast, and it would still be quite miserable quite quickly. But plants would be left. Okay, so we're going to leave plants in place. Plants will be the only life forms that are 100% left in place because they don't have nervous systems. We'll talk about that in another video. This whole thing about plants feeling pain and all this other type of stuff. We'll talk about that elsewhere, all right? For this video, bear with me. So, okay, you have the red button, which allows all plants to remain, and it simply eliminates the ability of humans and the vast majority of animals from reproducing, okay? Like all land-walking animals, the majority of fish in the sea, etc., right? Are you going to press it? Now, if you're an antinatalist that thinks deep enough and cares enough about the wills and desires of others, you're still probably not going to press even that red button. Why? Because antinatalism extends to the extent of what you individually do with your own life and sentience. It doesn't have to do with what you impose on the sentience of others either way. So in other words, you want the freedom and ability to voluntarily remove yourself from this world with medical legal assistance if and when you desire it, which is what every antinatalist agrees with. Everybody should have access to this ability if that's what you want, okay? At least the vast majority of antinatalists believe that should be the case. And it should, for obvious reasons. But that's the extent of it. And you're going to yourself decide to not yourself contribute more lives to this hellscape that already exists. But you're not interested in playing God and deciding the fates of other living beings at a whim, at the flick of a finger, at the push of a button, even if you have the power ability to do so, because you recognize how fucked up that is. Because it's like, wait a minute, if I can't like get inside the heads and know exactly what the desire of every fucking sentience is, okay, do you want to be vaporized or do you not? Do you want to be able to keep reproducing or do you not want that ability? Are you okay with that or are you not? You see what I'm saying? It's really fucked up, and it's messed up on so many levels, because what you're doing is you're fucking around with the desires of others in artificial ways, okay? that they may not desire. So
yeah, but then we're
this is the issue here.
the upsetting
the
of
issue
that desire
with evilism is they're all about just eliminating all life as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, as the goal. That is their goal specifically, okay? Or that's what they consider to be the most ideal goal. So number one, the fact that they can't actually act on it, and if they had the ability to act on it, it would be a Death Star nightmare villain scenario as soon as that happens. That's the other issue with evilism. Now, actually, there's a third issue with evilism that I should have mentioned earlier, which we'll cover right now. They fail to take into account that in order to ensure life doesn't reemerge later in this or another universe or some other place, they would have to attain God levels of power and influence to ensure that they could prevent life from re-emerging later on. It would require at least one sentience to prevent life from emerging in all forms of variations later into the future. You would at least need one living being that's sentient, preventing against it, that exists forever, doing that activity, or a small group of beings at the very least to prevent new life forms from emerging or arising anywhere in any universe throughout all space and time or beyond, okay? Because if they disappeared themselves also, well, life is just going to inevitably reemerge somewhere else again anyway, in this universe or a different one, wherever, right? Life is inevitable unless it's actively prevented from reemerging. This is the part that they don't calculate because they don't think deep enough about it, all right? So they don't actually really adhere to their own values all that much because they want to disappear also, along with disappearing all other sentiences and forms. But wait a minute, hold on a minute. You can't be doing this disappearing thing yourself. If there's going to be a need for maintenance against new sentiences arising, you're going to at least need to keep yourself existing or some other sentience existing that wants to keep existing. You can't just all fucking disappear. What are you doing? You know? They don't think about these things though, okay? Because unlike people like you and me who do think about these things, and we're like, wait a minute, if they're going to follow through that philosophy, you need to make sure to prevent reemergence of sentience later. You can't just vaporize all sentience that currently exists and just, okay, whatever, happens with reality later on, bye-bye. I mean, what the hell? You're not solving anything that way. Life that emerges later might be far worse than life that emerged here, and you might be the inadvertent cause of, see, there's the issue, potentialities. You may be the inadvertent cause of worse forms of life emerging later that are more tortured, far worse than they are now. Because you vaporized all the life that was almost at transhumanist levels, almost able to bypass most of the problems. You fucking asshole. Right? You see? So it's a non-solution proposed as a solution. I talk about this all the fucking time, but they never fucking get it because their psychology is culty as fuck. Okay? It's culty because It's about,
Really
no, you have to
not.
philosophically, and if you had access to a red button, you need to be a person who would immediately push that right away to vaporize all life. And if you don't have that stance, there's many layers of things that are fucked up in you that are more fucked up than in me, right? So it's this prudish high horse bullshit mentality that they're more moral, they're more ethical, because in their head they have floating around this idea that vaporizing all life is the maximally moral thing you could ever do. Never mind whether forms underneath their Death Star's domination want to keep living or not. Never mind that part. Just
Well, who cares? They won't experience their desires being upset.
okay. But here's the other thing:
They
they're also
just
dishonest because they don't
get
admit
gone.
that that's what their
Gone.
psychology is, even though that's obviously what it is. So it's short-sighted, it's clunky, it's a non-solution proposes a solution, and it's fucking villainous and insanely psychotic if they actually had access to something like that. I wouldn't want any of these fuckers near a red button, okay? At all, ever. I would want them as far from a fucking red button as I could keep them, okay? Capiche? Now, if you're an antinatalist who's not an ethlist, I might actually trust you around a red button. I might actually try to be like, you know what? Because you're an actual legit person who actually respects the desires of other sentiences and have a hands-off approach to the desires of other sentiences as much as you possibly can, right? Outside of what you individually have to do via necessity in this world, or what you deem to be necessary in your own life, right? But hands-off approach.
Well,
to the
I
rest
deem
of
it
in the sense of,
necessary
okay,
to push a button.
I'm not going to play God in
And
that specific
life
way,
if there
right?
was an option to.
Even if given the opportunity, because God, if you recall, is an evil fucking being, even if it, he, she, etc. exists. That's the problem. So the problem with evilism is you leave reality open to potentialities after you're gone, after you're disappeared. And that's the most evil motherfucking thing you could ever do. Leaving reality to a possibility of something later on is the most evil, diabolical motherfucking thing ever, because within those possibilities is included the possibility of future torture. Advancing transhumanist tech and making a point to guarantee and assure
It's
things,
just
specifically
religious
in relationship to
nonsense, in my
removing
opinion.
sentiences from nervous systems that are able to experience torture while maintaining their pleasure-capable sentience. Okay, doing things like this, specifically, in particular, is far more responsible and reasonable in achieving something, because you're taking into account reality, how it actually operates, and you're understanding that that is doing something to assure against potentialities, something, okay? You're not just leaving reality open to possibilities. You're solidifying against those possibilities to the maximum by staying sentient and ensuring that sentient forms that come later, if they pop up later, are not exposed to torment when they become sentient, okay? Ethelists aren't going to be able to achieve that because they're going to be fucking gone, disappeared. They're not going to fucking be around.
Yeah.
So
how
it's
are you
basically
gonna
sayonara,
prove
suckers,
that?
good luck to whatever bacteria then later forms into some other variation of consciousness, or whatever molecules or forms form into something else on some other planet, and then they have to grovel and crawl and, like, you know, figure out and eventually get to their human level or higher intelligence levels and be like, you know what, fuck, and then they have to deal with effortless assholes within their own society trying to red button and vaporize all of them as
It's
well.
not
You
gonna
know, it's like, come
happen.
on, man. Nobody wants to deal with that bullshit again. Least of all having to deal with fucking fanatical ethelists suggesting a red button scenario that you're not okay with your own life.
Intelligence
you'd
is
be
a
vaporized,
very
so it wouldn't
niche
matter whether you
thing
desire
that's
to-
never selected for, pretty much.
Okay, fucking Sith Lord, have fun with that. I know it doesn't matter to you, and that's the problem with evilism. We know it doesn't matter. I know my will or desires don't matter to you, you fuckers. And that's why I don't like your asses. Except a few of you who have it as a philosophy, an armchair philosophy floating around, but who wouldn't actually act on it if you had the red button. At least with me, right? And it's like, why does it have to be that red button? There's so many better fucking versions of a red button scenario. What if, okay, you can push a red button and ensure every sentience is pleasured perpetually into the future, that they're eliminated from the potentiality for trillions of years, quadrillions of years, as far as you can see into the future, from the ability to feel torturous degrees of pain. Would you push the red button? Fuck yes, I'll push that red button. Think about how much I could achieve within those billions and trillions and quadrillions of fucking years to ensure that much more against torture later on. You can achieve so much fucking shit. Okay? So, yeah, would it technically be an evil? Oh, but you're interfering with the desires of those who want to be... Actually, no, I wouldn't. The better red button would be like, okay, the ones who do want to continue living, I will give them guaranteed pleasure perpetually, okay? The ones who want to disappear, I will vaporize. The ones who actually willingly want to disappear for as long as they possibly can from sentient states, I disappear them only, selectively, the ones who want it, and I not disappear the rest of them who want to keep doing the living thing. And then people say, well, aren't you interfering with the wills of those idiots who want to suffer to some degree in order to add some psychotic degree of value to their lives? And I'd be like, okay, sure, I'm willing to accept that degree of evil. Yes, you can call me an evil motherfucker for eliminating that dumbass asshole's desire to suffer and for his family to suffer to some extent, because he's just fucking stupid. Okay, sure, I'm willing to accept that collateral. At least he's going to experience pleasure, and his kids are, and they won't know any different afterwards anyway. So what difference does it make? He's not going to be harmed, you know? So he's not going to be bothered after the fact that he's pleasured now, perpetually, etc. Right? So yeah, sure. Any way you cut anything, folks, there's a certain degree of evil involved in it, no matter how you look at it, okay? In that case, it would just be a bunch of fucking idiots filling the planet who think it's evil, who want torture and suffering to remain as possibilities. So it's like, nope, not cool. We're not going to have that happening, you dumbasses. So sure, you can see me as a villain or whatever for thinking that way, because I am. But I'm a much better quality villain than these ethelists would ever be, all right? That's a fact. Much more calculated, much more specific, much more surgical in my precision, all right? And much more honest in terms of my actual agenda as well. So with this whole on and on thing about, you know, oh, if you're an antinatalist and you're not an ethelist, you may as well be a breeder bullshit. That's the dumbest motherfucking bullshit I've ever fucking heard. Like, telling people they may as well fucking be breeders, they may as well fucking be natalists if they're not going to be ethelists. What the hell are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? You dumbass.
That I agree
the
with.
hell? That's the stupidest thing ever.
That you man.
The reason it's so fucking dumb is
stupid.
why would you be better off bringing more forms here? Why? That doesn't make any fucking sense. So what? Now you're supporting natalists more than antinatalists all of a sudden? Ethelists, what the hell are you doing? I would agree that the natalist psychology is actually less psychotic in certain ways than the ephelist psychology. The ephelist psychology, when actually acted on via red button. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about armchair bullshit stupidity ephelism, which is what ephelism is right now. I'm talking about ephelism when able to be acted on, when you have an ephelist with access to a goddamn red button. Natalist psychology is less bad than ephelist psychology in that scenario. Okay? Period.
Disagree.
For many different fucking reasons.
But
And I
many,
can prove it
many
to you
reasons.
if I haven't already in this video. Okay? It's still bad. Yes, obviously it's still bad. And it's demonic as fuck to keep producing and putting forms here. But it's not as bad as what the ephelists are wanting to do if they had access to a fucking red button. I can guarantee you that one. So the natalists being treated as like this proxy group or breeder group or just, it's so fucking ridiculous, okay? They need to be treated as actual individuals that they are, all right? With desires that have valid significance to them. Okay? Because just because you or I, personally, individually feel antinatalism is the right way to go, and we recognize the moral and ethical connotations therein, we respect the desire of other sentiences, even though we may acknowledge and be like, hey, that's insanely fucked up. We still respect their desire and ability to do things other than what we ourselves are deciding to directly do, okay? Even though we'll be like, yes, you doing that as an act, producing a kid is evil as fuck, what the hell are you doing? We're still for people's ability to be able to desire or want to do those things or engage in actions that are not us engaging in those actions, right? While being like, hey, you shouldn't do that, that's fucked up. Right? You don't have to be a god level fucking Death Star Sith Lord to fucking be a valid antinatalist, okay? I'm not sorry, you don't have to be that, all right? None of us are that anyway, so what the fuck are you doing philosophizing about this armchair bullshit that you're never gonna have access to? And goddess, heaven, paradise, reality, sanity forbid that you ever have access to a fucking red button with your current psychology of fanatical ephelism. Okay, fuck, man. Like, people talk about this red button thing as if it's just some casual. It's like, no, that's some serious fucking bullshit. What are you talking about? You can't just fucking casually, nonchalantly talk about what somebody would do with a fucking red button. What the hell? What are you doing? That's like casually talking about, oh, if you have access to fucking the entire world's nuclear arsenal, would you push it? Like, that's not something you can just fucking casually, nonchalantly talk about. Like, you're talking about the guaranteed deaths in horrifically painful ways of huge numbers of fucking sentiences, okay? That desire to keep doing the living thing and experiencing sentience pleasure thing. Sentient pleasure thing.
What do you mean by problems people
Yeah,
cause
man.
from having too much ego?
So that's why I keep saying it's just
You can
fucking armchair
elaborate
philosophy.
further.
Antinatalism covers all your bases already. It covers your bases of the entirety of the philosophy, and it's something you can
To me, I mean, problems come from the fact
actually
that,
act
like,
on. You can
sentience
actually
is a thing,
actively
just pain,
not bring more kids
suffering,
here.
and-
You can actually do that. You don't need a red button for that. That's something you can actively do.
Yeah,
okay?
of course, my dude.
And you
I'm just listening right now.
are better off doing that than the natalist bringing new sentiences into this current hellscape. Yes, you are better off doing so. You're less evil.
If you want to come on the live stream, Scott, I'll send the link into the chat. If you want to just hang out here also and listen to me vibe, that works too.
Evil than the natalist in that particular regards. Now, when it comes to diet, diet is a totally separate subject. People like to correlate diet with antinatalism as if they're one of the same thing. They're not, okay? So this is the other big problem, is that antinatalism...
Well, they are and aren't. Like, they're not the same thing, but consequentially, they kind of are. Like, I mean, via the supply and demand chain, you are contributing to things being brought into existence if you are, like, a non-vegan / not someone who gets their meat sources from hunting and fishing. So, I mean, like, if you're an antinatalist, you should be vegan, though they're not technically, like, linked together. They are linked together in that sense. Like it would be weird to me to think that, like, I don't know, it just seems odd to me, given that, like, consent would apply to animals and pain and suffering would also apply to animals. Like, whatever value the person has for antinatalism should also apply to animals, I'd assume. Like, I don't know how they would justify antinatalism without it also just being justified, like towards animals as well. Unless they're antinatalist informant, and then I guess you somehow find some weird thing involving, like, freedom of, like, human beings, but not about animals, I guess, because animals, I guess, don't count or whatever. I don't fucking know. He doesn't explain that very well. But, you know, it is what it is. It sounds so funny going so fast. Is it Andrew Tate talking? Yeah, I'm Andrew Tate, my dude. It's your boy, Andrew Tate, out here sex trafficking people, you know, as one do. Give me your daughters. Just kidding.
does not have anything to do, one way or another, with veganism at all. Either way. It's a separate subject matter. Just like car mechanics doesn't have anything to do with construction work, even though there's a rough correlation and a crossover of certain aspects of knowledge that apply to both. They're different fucking subject matters, okay? Antinatalism is not veganism. Veganism is not antinatalism. There's some antinatalists that are vegans, there's some that aren't. There's some that are both, there's some that are either or. Some vegans that aren't antinatalists that are not vegans, and some are both, okay? And you can go on all day just saying, hey, I'm more moral than this guy over here because I'm both. These fuckers, they're not going all the way, they're not as moral as me, blah, 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 right? The point is they're different philosophies, they're different subject matters, period. So you correlating, oh, antinatalism, you need to be vegan, vegan, oh, you need to be an antinatalist. You're wrongly correlating two subject matters. No, a construction worker does not need to be a car mechanic. A car mechanic does not need to be a construction worker. Capiche? You get it? You got it? Good. Okay.
Well, that's like kind of like, I don't know. I feel like everybody needs to be an ethicist and antinatalist. Vegan, I mean, I think everybody should be scrapitarian or vegan, one of the two, but you know, when it comes down to it, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, when Perpetual Pleasure here is basically saying that like a vegan as like an ideology doesn't have to be an antinatalist, and I agree. Like the ideology of veganism doesn't imply that you ought to not have children; it just implies you ought to not cause suffering unnecessarily to animals. Oh, perpetual.
Yo, bro.
How's it going?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Oh, can you hear me or?
Yep, I can hear you.
Testing 1 2. Awesome. Yeah, I'm just reviewing your video because I saw it a couple days ago and I was like 3 minutes into it and I was like, another video dissing on the ethicalists. I see how it is.
I was like, I know Brad's gonna listen to this and respond to it.
Yeah, so I figured I'd do a response to that, and I'm like, 'cause I know it's a little bit of defending the antinatalist informant, and I have gripes of him a little bit. So I was like, I'm gonna listen to this one, and I'm like, and it has a little bit to do with the ethicist red button thing. And you know, I'm gonna push that red button 1,000 times over. So
Of course you are.
if I could, I'd push the button with and transfer my consciousness into another reality, so I can push the button in that reality too.
I know. I'm vividly aware.
But yeah, I mean, in my perspective, it's just like death isn't an infringement upon anybody's desires, because once you're dead, you just don't desire, you can't experience your desires being infringed upon. So pushing the button to me is just like simply the ending of all suffering. It's not the imposing upon desires, it's just the ending of suffering.
If you're somebody like me who desires to keep desiring and not have desire wiped out, then it is in a position on desire. But I see what you mean in the generalized sense, though. So my desire is to not have my desires wiped out. So therefore, it is an infringement, at least on my desires.
You'd never be able to experience that desire being infringed upon.
Well, I'm experiencing it now. I'm experiencing the desire now before I get wiped out by your red button, bro. Right now, I'm experiencing that desire.
Yeah, you're experiencing like a distress from what you call like a sacred delusion. You know, like you're like imagining like vividly like what it'd be like to be like vaporized, like and like all your like, you know, knowing that you're gonna like rail some hot MILF and get like a orgasm from that, and you're like, I'm gonna be deprived of my orgasm, no. But for me, it's just like you're not gonna be deprived of that orgasm. It's just simply, you know, you guys are just there 1 second, like, yeah, how's it going, stable? You know, and just you're gone.
That is where we differ, brother. Right there. That's the main difference. Oh man.
I don't see it as an evil, you know. It's just like, I don't know. It's like a zebra on the savannah, and then you just like trank dart it. You know, it just goes night night for a little bit, and then it wakes up, and it's like, what was that? And it goes back to munching on grass. Only instead of waking back up, there's just no waking back up. It's just as munching on grass, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I feel a little, and then it just doesn't wake back up. You know, it's like that, but you like push a button instead.
And I'm aware that the idea of the red button would be that hypothetically pushing it would, of course, the implication of the red button would involve guaranteeing no sentience arises again. Obviously, not only just pressing it.
Apologies, what was
no
that?
sentience.
I know it's a good weekend, but the Packer game isn't till tomorrow, Mom. Yeah, but my phone's charging, G. Yeah, y'all are fun. I'm just sorry. Oh no, they're walking outside. The Wi-Fi is going bad.
Oh,
Testing 1 2. Um,
what's happening,
what
bro?
were you
What's
saying?
happening?
Apologies. My mom just walked into my room and started talking to me, so I got a little distracted.
Oh. Well, what I was saying is, yeah, but I know what you mean. Basically, your red button would imply and involve, and I assume other Ephelis red button, that after it's pressed, it also includes preventing sentience from coming up into existence ever again, also, versus just eliminating sentience then and there. But
Yeah, and I think even if I mean, I assume that like by nuking the planet, it would be that case scenario, given that it took billions years for life to reach the point of having a nervous system, and then billions of more years till it gets to the point where like it has like cognitive awareness of itself and have like existential dread and all that stuff. So I don't really think like it would ever pop up again if we were to wipe out all life on Earth or a majority of life on Earth that's like sentient. Like it just would never crop up again. Evolution wouldn't select for it because it usually selects for like pinchers and things that are good at like enveloping their bodies around other things and absorbing them. It doesn't really select for like intelligence, really, like per se. It's not like not. It's usually not beneficial for reproduction, as we
that's a
can
good point.
depressed people around who aren't reproducing these days.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
you
so
know,
that's
and
what
then
I think, at least.
yeah, I mean if there was a red button that somehow, some way could guarantee that no sentience for the rest of eternity anywhere, including in this universe or others, ever popped up again, I think that would be kind of maybe a little bit of a different story if there was some way to actually somehow guarantee that. But I look at it and I'm like, well, unless that specifically could be the thing guaranteed somehow. My mindset is, why not just have a red button that's a better alternative that ensures going forward for the rest of eternity, all sentiences are wiped out that don't want to remain sentient. The ones that do want to remain sentient are allowed to remain sentient, but they're not allowed to feel pain or inflict pain. They're only able to feel bliss of different types and degrees. So you have like two options. Okay, don't exist ever. And then if you're one that decided to remain, you could just decide whenever you want to disappear forever and disappear forever, like at your will, basically.
Well,
That would be a much better red button.
I have two responses to this. The naive utilitarian response, which is basically just saying that like, hey, unfortunately, all that matters is suffering reduction ethics, and all these things that these people are craving for pleasure. They're just wrong to desire these things, and when it comes down to it, they're being tricked by their billions of years of programming to want to like chase this chase. In reality, they're just basically going through a bunch of pain for no reason. Here's Tyler. He's joining us as well.
Oh, the
But
guy that thinks I should kill myself. Hey.
yup. And
I don't
and
know what to say, man. I don't know. You're making me speechless. You're making me speechless. I can't run for fucking president anymore.
but yeah, when it comes down to it, the more practical thing is like when it comes down to it is just like there's no way that we could make such a button to like wipe out all people who are unsatisfied with life and in this grind set and all that and this like useless lives or majority suffering, and then allow people who have like blissful lives that want to continue it on and genuinely have lives worth continuing to continue. I don't think it's possible from a practical sense to ever make that button. So when it comes down to it, it's just like, do we want to wipe out all life, which is like nukes or like like shooting the course of all the planet off of its orbit and just like basically destroying the atmosphere, like whatever we choose to do, that, or just allow all the suffering to continue on for another like 100,000 years till the sun heats up and everything just becomes no longer viable for life on Earth. So basically, this kind of like for me, it's like it kind of just comes down to the practical thing is, do I nuke the planet or do I not? And I choose nuke the planet, or the ethicist armchair thing of like, well, if there was purely this button and 2 buttons in front of me, the one where I could push it and it would wipe out all life in the multiverse, or the one where I push the button and it would wipe out all life in the multiverse that wants to voluntarily go and allow everybody else who has blissful lives that wants to continue to live, I would still push the button that eliminates all life, solely because I feel like the desires that these other people are having are just trickery, basically, like biological trickery that
Yeah.
is making
I
them
understand.
want to chase this, like chase that's not worth chasing to begin with. It's kind of like like someone in an abusive relationship, like thinking that they should still be in the abusive relationship. Like if I had a button to end that abusive relationship, like right then and there, I would push that button despite like their desire to continue being in it and them thinking that it's healthy. I'm going to choose the button and be like, no, I'm sorry, your delusion's not worth embracing. Boop. You know, like that's basically me.
I see. Yep. Well, Tyler, what is this, man, about I'd be better off and all these other people would be better off killing ourselves? I mean, philosophically, from Brent's perspective, I understand what you mean if that's what you're meaning, and that seems to be what you're
No,
implying,
I'm
but
saying it's a negative utilitarian argument. I mean, I'm just saying if I mean, I don't know how to. You can't really describe pain. I think pain is indescribable. Like, I mean, is pain like pain isn't really something that you can actually have thoughts about.
I'm not sure if I agree with that 100%. Like, I mean, kind of. I mean, it's hard to describe pain. It's just kind of like it's like describing the inner monologue, like or like inner image. It's hard to do that. Like Reed McLeod says he doesn't have an inner visual, but he has like memories and he can pull up memories in his brain. And to me, it's like I don't know. Like I feel like we're pretty much on the same page, but I feel like I have an inner visual, and he says he doesn't have an inner visual, but it sounds like we're describing very similar things. So it's hard to describe our inner experiences in general, but when it comes down to it, it's hard to be like, if I drove a nail into my hand right now, I wouldn't be like, yeah, that's just like an arbitrary thing that's like any other sensation. I'd be like, no, that is like searing, like piercing, like I don't know, like I'd have like ways to describe it that sound unpleasant to the brain. Like you can visualize in your brain, like, yeah, I don't want whatever a piercing sensation is or a searing sensation. You know, like I like semantically, you can understand that like whatever that translates into your brain is like an unpleasant thing you do not desire. So like pain is pain. Pain is hurt, ache, fear, anxiety, panic, as Dave says here, and all things that are unpleasant. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can describe pain. I feel like, but I mean, perhaps it's
Yeah,
just a semantics thing.
well, pain is easy to describe, man. So, like, there's so many things that are fucking painful. I mean, there's all out torture, of course, but I mean, first of all, that's why I always emphasize philosophy needs to be practical with what we're actually doing and going to do. Like, I mean, saying I should kill myself or all those other people should kill ourselves, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to kill myself, period. So it's kind of pointless musing on it, saying we'd be better off because it's a redundancy, basically. It's like, because it's not going to happen anyway, therefore, why even philosophize about it? That's basically my point. It's like something that realistically isn't going to happen, why philosophize about it? It's kind of just a redundancy armchair exercise at that point, which to me is totally useless as something you even put mental energy into. It's like, okay, what can we actually do, and what am I actually going to be doing? Well, I'm going to actually continue doing the transhumanist living thing, not the killing myself thing, unless I'm killed randomly by some source that I don't plan, obviously, but you know. So
I guess like if the promortalist argument makes sense, like it makes sense to me,
But
but
we
like
just
I
do
have
that. We just do
biological.
that. I'm just saying. Do you really think we're actually? Do you really think we're the cause of other people's pain?
do you really think we're the cause of other people's pain? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, do you really think we're fucking gods? Like we're gods and we're controlling the universe, and the universe is like has our favor?
Not at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. All the more reason to get to that level as quick as possible, sooner than later, if we can. versus having everything reset to just, whatever's going on. Like I was telling Brent, I mean, unless you can actually guarantee that in every multiverse ever that all life is wiped out indefinitely into the future for a quadrillion, 10 quadrillion plus years or something. I mean, it's not really doing anything to just wipe out all life. If there's any remote possibility of it emerging again, it's not really solving anything, because it's just going to have to clunkily develop itself later or whatever.
It's eliminating the pain that would have existed during that time, during that gap, though, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not really solving the issue. That's why I emphasize the technological things, because at least that way we can potentially get to a state of where all life that does exist is no longer pain sentient. It's only pleasure sentient of various gradients. And it's not a form of life that has a nervous system that's exposed to pain. So, and it's also, if you have a life form like that, you would be able to maintain against other life forms that are susceptible to pain and agony and torment and stuff of all varieties. And that would be much more of a lasting solution to the issue than just life not being there at all. You know what I'm saying? That's precisely why I go for that solution, or at least try at it, because it's more of a solving something than just wiping out all life, period. Because wiping out all life in all multiverses everywhere is far more unrealistic than the red button I was suggesting, where the life forms that do need to maintain against new life and or want to remain existing, at least they need to remain alive if all other life is wiped out, You need at least somebody maintaining
Don't you
against
think that, like, if you were to, like, have this pleasure button, it would essentially, like, eliminate all desires from existence? Like, you wouldn't really be much of anything after you push that button, the pleasure button, or if, like, you transhumanize, like, life to the point where, like,
you'd have
couldn't
desires
suffer.
and feelings. It just wouldn't be within the fold of, it wouldn't be driven by pain leading you into it. It would be variations of pleasure driven. So it's like, okay, this pleasure right now, this other pleasure over here, versus, okay, pain equals let's escape into pleasure. It would just be pleasure driven instead of pain driven, right? That would be the only difference.
So you don't think pain exists?
No, pain is horrible. Did you say I don't think pain is good? Is that what you said?
Yeah, but pain is only subjective. I mean, how can pain not be subjective?
Well, it's irrelevant if it's subjective. Of course it's subjective, but it's still torturous and it shouldn't be experienced. So like someone being tortured to death, that's subjective of an experience, but that shouldn't exist.
What? Subjective exploration? Subjective exploration, like, wanting to do harm, and
objective exploration.
I mean, how do you get determinism out of every single murder that happened today?
Everything is subjective that happens as a sentient experience. No matter how large scale it is, it's always subjective. So the objective subjective back and forth is a pointless discussion, because every experience is subjective, no matter how large scale it is or how commonly held of an experience it is. So the subjectivity or not is an irrelevant point. What happened to... Oh, he looks like...
He just dipped out of nowhere. I don't know.
Well, anyway, hopefully you can still hear Tyler, but basically, it seems like you asked two questions. The first question is, obviously pain is bad. I mean, even if somebody like a nut job thinks pain is good in some way, they're just wrong. They're just incorrect. It's not good. It's just bad, period. And like, with my recognition that I align with Brant on is that every aspect of sentient experience is an evil of some kind, is a bad no matter what. Whether we recognize it's a bad or not is a secondary factor. So we're both recognize that, yeah, even the pleasures are sacred delusions. The only difference is how we view the value of sacred delusions or not. I value them as valuable sacred things, which should be pursued and maintained, and he thinks they shouldn't be maintained if there's an alternative of eliminating them also, along with the rest of sentience. That's our core disagreement, basically. Yeah. My stance is they're worth maintaining. His stance is they're not worth maintaining. That's about it.
What do you think in regards to, like, if you are in this transhumanist state where you're no longer chasing pain avoidance, but you're just chasing pleasure? Like, it does seem to me like your desires can still be upset, though. Like, wouldn't that be a form of pain, like mental, like, pain?
Not really, no, because there's a way that desires can be operated and run that way to where there wouldn't be an upsetability to them. So, for example, if no matter what you do or engage in, you're going to be feeling happy about it or pleasurable about it, it's just going to be, if one thing doesn't work out, you're just going to be feeling pleasured with the other things that are working out. It's basically going to be novelty instead of, oh, I'm feeling bad, therefore I need relief. It's just going to be various forms of novelty that are constantly being experienced, right? So in this world right now, for example, the like the orgasm, right? Like if we're just on a baseline level having a good day, right? And we're not necessarily experiencing pain itself. And we can go into the details of further after the point. Like, so, and then I go and masturbate or have sex with a female, and then I feel even better. Me having intercourse with her doesn't have to be driven by the fact that my day is bad or I'm feeling bad in some way. It's that it's just I want to feel even better than how I'm already feeling. But if I don't have intercourse or sex in an ideal biological system or body, you're not going to feel lack of sex as a problem or as an issue. You're still going to feel fully satisfied and happy without engaging in it. You're just going to feel additionally happy if you engage in it, basically. But it's not going to be the sense of missing out or lacking something like it is currently in our current biology, whether we recognize it or not, right? So if the physiological system's processing of pleasure was adjusted in the right direction, sexual pleasure and romantic pleasure and all other pleasures would not need to be pain driven or necessity driven. They could be novelty driven. And that's the point I bring up, and that's my main stance on it, is that exactly. It's that, and it would actually make the pleasures more pleasurable, because instead of having this contrast of pain next to it, something other than the pleasure, you're not going to be in this anxiety-ridden, oh my God, what's going to happen after the pleasure's over? That's going to suck ass. It's going to be like, you're just going to plop back into other pleasures and go about your merry day. So, that's how I see it. And my life experience itself is already pretty close to that, even with a physiological system that is obviously, whether I know it or not, driven by these pains and urges that are uncontrollable and stuff. But pretty close to that already. It's like the only thing I would need to adjust or eliminate is my body's physiological overwhelming urge. If I don't give it a release, I feel bad or weird part of it. So like if I'm building up and I want to like jack off or something or have sex, and then it just builds and builds and builds the urge, and I start feeling bad if I have to artificially abstain from it or don't release. That would be the part that would be adjusted or fixed to where it wouldn't have to be released. It wouldn't have to be a thing that causes issues built by building up. It would just be something that is a novelty at that point, instead of, oh, I have to do it. It would basically be a state where you're already experiencing an orgasmic state already as your baseline, right? So that would, and you would cognizantly be aware and feeling that degree of pleasure cycling through your system. It wouldn't be like, oh, orgasm state, that's our standard, therefore it's not pleasure at all anymore. No, it'd still feel good. It would just be the baseline from which you could jump into greater pleasures from, right?
Okay.
It's really, that's what I'm trying to get at, basically.
I have a few other questions regarding this, just because I don't necessarily disagree with that type of thing. Like, if this would be possible, I'd be like, okay, I mean, that'd be like cash money, I suppose.
Yeah.
But okay, so like, if you're in this like level of like programming at this point where you're no longer feeling physical pain, you're just chasing pleasures of sorts, and you don't feel upset when they're like not achieved. It's just kind of like, oh, doobie, I guess I'll just chase something else. How do you think people would like be able to react to other people's suffering that aren't like, or other people or animals suffering that aren't like engineered? Like, how would like, as I feel like you would still
that's why it's definitely an oblivious state, a demonic oblivious state of sacred delusion, because no, you wouldn't be able to process what pain was, because that would cause you pain emotionally and mentally if you could process what that was. However, the advantage would be that you would be built and programmed also to maximize the pleasure of every sentience you encounter as your auto mode. So basically, even though you couldn't process what torture or agony was anymore, you would be programmed to increase and maximize to make their system physiologically like yours, right? So that would be how it would go. Basically, you would go in and then start modifying their system to be like yours in processing of pleasure, various degrees and gradients. And their memory, their understanding of what torment would be would also be wiped in the process. And they would experience life like you, basically. So you would be benefiting sentiences. You just wouldn't be benefiting them in the sense of being aware of what torture is. You would just be removing them from torture in action and bringing them into pleasure, basically, is how that would go.
How would you really be able to like remove them from the torture if you didn't recognize the torture, really?
Well, think about it this way. Like, you would be able to recognize what gives them pleasure, though. So that's all
true.
you would need for removing them from the torturous state. In fact, you actually wouldn't even need that. As long as you had the ability to modify their system and make it like your body or system, and just transfer their sentience to a form that's similar to yours, that's all you'd need. You wouldn't even necessarily need to really be aware of a huge amount, all that much. I mean, especially if technology advanced to that degree. But yeah, I mean, you definitely wouldn't be able to be capable of recognizing what torture was because you're.
Do you think that like we would need sort of like ephilism at this point then, like a transhumanist combined with ephilism, kind of, because like animals are still around at that point. Like they would be suffering, and people just wouldn't be able to empathize if they're suffering, and we'd basically just be like, oh yeah, like it would be like the happy farm scenario where it's like, oh yeah, let's just bring as many cows into existence to feel happiness like this, and raise them all like peachy and then slaughter them because we don't understand what pain is.
Well, it wouldn't be bringing new sentiences in. Like what you're suggesting is antinatalism already takes care of that. And that's why I say ephilism is not necessary, because if it's actual ephilism, it's going in the direction of removing all life, period. If it's just antinatalism, which doesn't need ephilism, then there's all sorts of possibilities, basically. So what you're suggesting is
wildlife suffering, though. Do you think we would just possibly ignore that, though, if you get to that point?
Well, it would be like this. There would be no, in the sentience, there wouldn't be this urge, okay, let's create new forms of sentience just from scratch and make new ones. It would be you experience pleasure directly yourself with whatever sentiences already exist and are already being pleasured, and there wouldn't really be a necessity of creating new sentiences. But and whatever sentiences you encounter that are existing, you just convert them over to being a sentience like you, basically, where it's like instead of being susceptible to whatever other thing they're susceptible to, they're maximizing their pleasure, their ability to experience life like you, modifying their system and all these other types of things. So it's the argument of, oh, well, it's just going to leave others to suffer or to rot, or doesn't really hold up if the technology was developed in the right way in that particular sense. The only thing it would tune the consciousness out from is what torture is in terms of experience of it. But the mechanics of like, okay, something is happening there that needs to be maximized in terms of pleasure would basically be how it's processed versus, oh, there's something bad happening there, they're hurting, I need to register that, and then you feel bad. It'd be like, okay, there's pleasure that needs maximization, let's maximize it. And you would feel good doing it. That kind of, that's basically how you process it.
I can't help but like imagine just like a fantasy world of like a bunch of overly happy people, and then like this like like an animal with like a broken limb, and like someone just walks up to it like, here's a cupcake and a sticker, and, like, you know, like I don't know.
Well, no, that wouldn't be maximizing his pleasure. And maximizing his pleasure would be healing the leg directly. So it has pleasure to the leg, and not only that, feeding it and giving it a physiological system like yours, where it is only pleasure cognizant of varieties of pleasure and not pain cognizant. So even if you couldn't get it to where the form was invincible to being killed and could just reform and reshape and remain after it's damaged or something, that even if you could just get it to where there was no more, there was just gradients of pleasure and there were other warning systems against damage aside from pain or torment, even if the form was completely destroyed and ripped to pieces accidentally or some way, it wouldn't be a painful experience when it's happening, basically. It would just be,
I mean, I understand that for the beings who have their stuff modified that, like, you know, they no longer feel pain. But for, like, the beings that do remain that haven't been modified yet, that do feel pain, it just seems like for the ones that have been modified, like, how would they understand, like, how would they understand what the ones that aren't modified are going through and be able to, like, remedy their
Well,
situations or,
they
like,
wouldn't need
properly?
to, because they would just be immediately transferred into forms, or they would be merged with bodies, genetic enhancements that would immediately make them only pleasure symptoms. Because the first thing that would happen is their ability to feel pain would be shut off, basically, immediately, along with the healing of their body parts and stuff simultaneously going on. And it's interesting because we're really not that far off from being able to do something in that direction technologically. We're not super far off, not anywhere near as far off as a lot of people think we are.
And you think we'd be
Because,
able to do this with animals, potentially?
oh
Like,
yeah, all sorts of it stuff, animals, insects, human forms, no problem. I think it
I
wouldn't be difficult at all. I mean, definitely we can start with humans, and that would definitely be very doable. And then from that point, expand it to other animal species and things like that. Yeah, I don't think it'd be that difficult at all, to be honest with you.
I don't know, man. That seems like really fantastical to me to like imagine transferring the consciousnesses or artificially modifying their whatever nanobots or something, the genetics of all sentient organisms on Earth, so they don't
All
feel
you'd really
physical
need to
or
do
emotional
is
pain.
modify. Yeah, all you'd really need to do is modify how the physiological system processes dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and modify how it experiences what the nervous system currently experiences as pain. Just that kind of a modification. Because all you would have to do is replace the warning system of damage and destruction to the body with something other than the sensation of pain. So, at least the very baseline you could start with is eliminating, capping off the ability to feel pain past a certain threshold to where the warning remains, and then that would be the first baseline enhancement. And then from there, it would increase over time, eliminating the ability to experience pain entirely. But to start with, it would be an enhancement of, okay, there's a cap in every biological system that's been injected with this or whatever the thing is, or has eaten this substance that alters their genetics or whatever. And okay, this means that therefore that form will have just a warning system to its body that, oh, that needs to be tended to. And it'll just be this thing that it's aware of versus, oh, that hurts anymore, basically. And once they tend to it, once it is taken care of, then the warning system shuts off and then they're hunky dory again. So it would basically be like the difference between, you're sitting inside of you're sitting inside of like a vehicle that crashes, right? And then your leg gets gashed into with a really sharp piece of metal. Instead of feeling, ow, that hurts, you have this constant like beep going off in your head. Warning, warning, fix that. Damage is happening there. But you wouldn't be feeling pain like, ow. You would just be like, okay, I need to fix this damage versus this hurts.
So like in robot or AI, you'd basically be
Yeah, more or less kind of like
that.
that. When it comes to pain anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like that way you could actually more effectively fix the issue and fix the thing. Because whatever, infected tissue starts to form, you could just keep going at it and keep sterilizing it and clean it out with no pain felt and deal with the thing continually ongoing and just keep living basically. And the pleasure that your brain experiences would give you the enthusiasm to help with the healing also. Because it's well known that positive thinking marginally affects healing to a certain extent without anything mystical, because you have, physiologically things are just flowing better through your system. So naturally you're not dealing with as much cortisol, and so not as many stress hormones. So your healing is going to go better if you're not stressed while you're trying to fix damage, So, but you'll have the full awareness that you need to fix it, because if you don't fix it, you're going to die, as like a factual thing. Okay, if not fixed, I will die for sure. I will disappear from sentience. So let's fix it. So that doesn't happen. But minus the anxiety about it, like, oh my God, this panic state or the pain, ouch, part of it, that's the main problem with the sentient issue, is that that's the main issue. The processing of needing to fix damage is an incredibly terrible, clunky system. that's basically what evolution has done for us, and it hasn't done us a favor in that regards. Instead of developing a system of warning that doesn't involve pain, that's a more efficient system. It gave us this system of feeling pain, and that's the problem with it. You know, evolution could have gone other ways, but it didn't. So it could have gone in the direction of, okay, warning system, fix it, versus, oh my god, that fucking hurts horribly. And then not, because when you're in a certain amount of agony, you can't even do anything to fix it, right? That's why you have to have other people helping you out. But like, you could literally perform surgery on yourself directly if you weren't feeling pain when things were damaged. You know, you can literally do your own surgery just in the middle of nowhere on yourself, you know, without needing help. So, and you'd heal better too. So that's what I'm saying. It's that's the part we're not very far from. That enhancement actually wouldn't be all that difficult to implant, at least in humans to start with, and then close to humans in cognizant level animals, like, you know, cats, dogs, deer, bear, whatever. And then from there expand it out to other forms and stuff like that. Rats, definitely, because their systems are quite similar to humans. Stuff like that.
Like, if you could do that via just like airdropping like some of the food that they eat or whatever, and it just, or like nanobots, like something like that, that just like massively spreads through, like infects and massively just like goes through a whole species like really fast.
Something that's breathed or like drank or eaten, basically.
Yeah, like something like that. Then I mean that's completely practicable, and I would not have. I would say it's, as a negative utilitarian, I'd say it's preferable to the current state of affairs. And if you could completely eliminate like all suffering via these means, I mean,
the goal.
That'd be the goal. I feel like it'd be a little unesthetic world. It'd be a bit of an unesthetic world for the eyes to watch like a bunch of animals just be like walking around with like broken limbs and shit, just like because they don't realize that they're like, you know, like doing bad things to themselves and being like, oh, I guess like.
Well, think about it. It would maximize humans' ability to help them, though, because right now, what do we have? We have veterinary clinics and stuff, but it would actually eliminate a lot of it because humans could actually devote a lot of their time to healing animals actively instead of them just being left to die wherever because of logistical problems due to humans' own pain that they're facing in their life and stuff. So it would actually help our ability to help animals even more. It would help everything on all fronts, actually. So people wouldn't just be standing there, oh, look, there's a deer with a broken leg. People would be going up to the deer and capturing it to ensure that they fix its leg and stuff. That is, of course, if the enhancement wasn't put in yet for quicker, faster healing of limbs without the need for surgery, which would be another thing that would be focused on. But the way I see it is that since we're already pretty close to that first enhancement anyway, at least with the pain sensation part, how the body processes pain, we may as well just keep trucking on technologically because that's something that is practical, that we can do, that's realistic, you know? Whereas, I mean, even if all the nukes in the world got used, there's still going to be something more than likely that survives and crawls out of the ground somewhere that's still pain sentient. I mean, I highly doubt that even if the entire world was radiated with nuclear weapons, I don't think it would eliminate all life completely. There'd probably be, you know, little coves of cockroaches and rats, you know, scuttled away somewhere or whatever that somehow managed to pull it off, not dying from it, crocodiles or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of species that are really fucking resistant to like toxic shit and every, you know, radiation or whatever.
Yeah.
So that would basically be a sloppy result at the end of it, and it wouldn't have actually solved the pain issue. You know, it would just be, okay, we've eliminated like 97, 98% of all life on Earth, but you still have like 2% that's eventually going to form into something else if they're able to evolve long enough, more akin to humans, right? Or something more intelligent at some point. So that's basically the issue you run into with a nuclear disaster that wipes or quote unquote everything out. It's not really going to cleanly actually wipe everything out. It's going to leave some residue, basically. So, you know, because there's bacteria and stuff that are resistant to radiation and things like that. There's different things that aren't necessarily going to be killed from that are microorganism type things and stuff. And if that's around,
wait, what happened? Let's repost the link. I don't know what happened to Scott there. Anyways, yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I'll just start responding, I guess, until he joins back again. Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, nuking the planet would eliminate the majority of life. Wouldn't eliminate all life, but like a majority is pretty damn good. I'd say the same issue would kind of arise with the transhumanist narrative. Like, you wouldn't really be able to transcend all creatures on Earth to like a pain-free zone. Everything's just gonna be reproducing. It's too chaotic, especially when certain motivations start becoming a little bit more like carefree and less focused on pain and more focused on pleasure. We're gonna kind of be like opportunistically pleasured, like oh yeah, like we should that thing's in suffering in front of us and looks like its limbs all fucked up. That makes me want to fix its fucked up limb. Reward achieved. But like we're not gonna be actively just like going out to like hunt down things to like remove their suffering because we don't have that like pain motivation. I guess that's how I kind of view things. But even if we could like have a perfect pleasurable world with all people hunting down the pain creatures, I don't know. It just seems to me like it's far too much time to get to that stage when you could just press a nuke button and just like right now if we just go like if I could transfer if you could transfer your consciousness and that everybody across the whole globe, Scott, and everybody was just like, oh, we need this transhumanist world. It would still take like hundreds of years to get to that point. But if I went like boop and just transferred my consciousness and everybody like Ethylism, it would just take like 10 seconds because like someone would be like everybody in the whole room would just look at each other and be like the button, and then everybody would just push the nuke button and everything would just be litty titty, quite literally. So when it comes down to it, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a lot faster and a lot more of like a potential guarantee with mine, where yours is like I don't know. I've seen a lot of sci-fi stories where transhumanist things go very array, and it turns into hellscapes really fucking fast. So it's just kind of like I don't know. I know what happens when I push the nuke button. 98% of things go bye-bye, and intelligent life that has existential dread never sparks up again. But if I don't, and I allow the transhumanist paradise to potentially come about, well, that's just as likely that we're going to be in a hell state where, like, it's just like capitalist warfare where we're trying to like have like little chips in our brains telecommunicating to each other for warfare and stuff, or like soldiers are like being biologically engineered so they don't feel war like pain so that they can be used on like the war front and stuff like that. But like we don't want civilians to have that capability, otherwise they can be used for like violent means and crime and stuff like that, and lack of like so the way I look at it is just there's way too much chaos in the transhumanist like approach. There's like a bazillion directions that this technology could go, and very very few of them are positive, and there's a lot shit ton of ways it could go very negative. Well, a nuclear button is just kind of like, well, we know it's not gonna like, well, nuclear bombs as they are now, we know it's not gonna like be 100% guaranteed, unless like we find a way to like knock the Earth out of orbit, which then would eliminate all life on Earth and never be habitable again. But if we were just nuke the planet and just have radiation take care of the whole shit, sure, 2% of the planet's gonna be 2% of organisms will suffer, but like that's 98% that's like gone forever. And then there's the heat death of our solar system, which will occur in like 10,000 years or some shit like that. So, moral of the story is it'll take a long time for evolution to get to the point where it is now, and life doesn't have that time before the sun goes bye-bye. So, I don't know. Anyway, either way, I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes to see if PP joins back, but otherwise, I'm gonna flip on my Uber app really quickly and get ready for some rides. Do 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 do. It's the noise of me turning my app online.
Head to your pickup at 2340 Cantor Lane C.
Goodbye. To the Shadow Realm I have gone, but where have you gone? Lordy, lordy.